Hello everyone, Jimmy here from Wine with Jimmy, and thank you so much for clicking by. This is the Wine with Jimmy channel, which does a lot of different wine education, really helping you get the maximum enjoyment from every drop of wine. Here, welcome to a series on mastering Germany. So I go into Germany in great detail about its grape growing, winemaking, and key styles, key regions. This is part of a multi-part series, and you can gain access to the full series by joining the monthly subscription of the Wine with Jimmy Club. Details of that is below this video. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the next few slides talking about the climate and weather generally of Germany. Now, as I just mentioned, this is the generalization of Germany in this presentation, but as I go through all the key regions of Germany, I will talk more specifically about the climate and weather with those specific regions. Now, Germany, of course, is a part of the European Union, and it designates the wine growing zones based on climate. And under this system, generally, Germany is categorized as Zone A, which is cold. But there is a little section in the southwest where you find Baden and arguably some years Pfalz, which are in Zone B, which is warmer. Generally speaking, Germany has a temperate continental climate. And continental climates will have those nice warm summers, but quite brisk and cold winters, with fairly large diurnal and annual temperature variations. So diurnal differences are daily differences, where you might find in, say, the center of summer, where you'll have a temperature of 35 degrees Celsius, around 100 Fahrenheit, dropping to, say, under 10 degrees Celsius, so probably somewhere around sort of late 40s Fahrenheit. So it's a very big swing, and that is in comparison to, say, maritime climates, where that swing is much littler. Now, annual temperature differences are different as well. So you'll find, of course, very bitterly cold winters typically can get in the minus 10, 15, 20 degrees Celsius, and then can be, of course, in summer as warm as 35 degrees Celsius or 100 Fahrenheit. Heat spikes in summer and winter freezes are, of course, very common in a climate like this. And I'm showing you a map here that has both rainfall and temperature. So just for this slide, we're talking about temperature. And you'll see that the blue lines indicate the winter temperatures that one can find, and the red lines indicate the summer. They are in Celsius, by the way. And these are your average temperatures in each of those seasons. So winter, you'll see that typically many of these areas are quite low. If they are fairly coastal, they might be sort of 3 to 5 degrees Celsius, but when they're more continental or more mountain, you are looking at sort of 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. And the summer temperatures do vary as well, as you'll see on the contoured lines on that map. Rainfall, we're using the same map. As you'll see, it has the key to the left-hand side. Rainfall is quite moderate, and it tends to fall primarily in spring, not summer, but then autumn and winter, generally. You'll find spring, yes, which gets the vines sort of kicking into gear. In autumn or fall, you'll find that it tends to be later into that season as you're heading into winter. So rainfall will generally decrease towards the end of the growing season. Warm summers and certainly favorable amounts of rain during vegetation in spring and long ripening periods really enable some quite key conditions for viticulture here in Germany. And that really helps retain the bright aromas and the fruit fresh acidity that you find in German wines. Winter rainfall tends to be, of course, snow-laden. and I'll show you a picture from Saxony in a few slides, from Schloss Proschwitz, which you'll see it's covered under about a foot of snow. Rainfall levels you see towards the Alp areas, so the Bayerische Alps in the southern section, and also the Schwarzwald is highlighted there. So the more mountainous areas, you find the rainfall can be up to, say, sort of 2,000 millimeters per year. But then it's much drier in areas where we find viticulture, often actually around 500 to 1,000 millimeters per year for most of our viticultural landscape. And I'll go through those specifically per key region as I go through the respective regions. Now let's just talk a bit more about the weather here. Maritime influences do affect Germany, but they do tend to come from the two seas, the North Sea, and then also the Ostsee towards that northeast. That is the Baltic Sea. Now, the weather patterns you see that I'm feeding in from the north here do come into Germany, but affect places like Berlin, Hamburg, Hanover, the northern areas of Germany, not where we find most of our viticulture, which is from the central to the southern section of Germany. Most of Western Germany, though, does benefit from a gentle, warm, wet maritime influence, which has been somewhat buffered. And this comes from the Atlantic Ocean, known as the Gulf Stream. So I've put a bit of that here. A lot of this is actually protected by mountains, be it Eiffel Mountains, be it the Vosges down here, the Hart Mountains of Pfalz, for example. And you get a protection, but some of it will come around, as you'll see, from more northern low-lying countries such as the Netherlands and Belgium, for example, and France. And that comes in and affects places such as the Aar, the Mittelrhine, and Rhine-based places as well, that kind of upper Rhine valley. But the one that is the most protected is the Pfalz with the Hart Mountains, which is down here. The Hart is just about here, and the Pfalz region is here. And what you find there is a very dry and sunny part of Germany. It is important to talk about cloud cover here as well, because Germany's climate is subject to sharp variations when westerly winds from the Atlantic collide, and that's warm winds, remember, collide with cold air masses that are moving in from northeastern Europe, so places such as Poland. Now, these climatic forces mean that you're going to get hot air meeting cold air, and this can create things like fogs and mists, but moreover can create cloud cover. These clouds can have a cooling effect by day. They block heat and sunlight, and that can have a restrictive effect on the amount of photosynthetic capability of the vine. But there's a reverse effect at night. You will find that, in fact, if it is cloudy at night, you will find that the heat is retained. It's like a thermal layer actually insulating the landscape. And this is why, really, if you have a clear, crystal clear night as you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning and it's still clear, you will have a cold morning on your hands because there's a lot of loss of heat with the lack of cloud cover. So that cloud coverage at night means that heat is retained in the landscape, and that can actually help reduce the risk of frost. A little word on the continentality. I alluded to this a little bit earlier. There is the great picture of the castle of Proschwitz in the background. That's in Saxony, or Saxon in Germany. This is actually taken at the gate of the estate. So this is in the far eastern part of Germany as we head towards Dresden, south of Meissen, for example. And in areas like Saxon, but also additional places like Franken and Saale-Unstrut, the climate gets drier with greater extremes of cold and heat. And that is because we become more continental as we are further away from any northerly German maritime effects or the westerly from the western side of Europe. So you get greater extremes of cold and heat. You get a growing season, which is typically shorter, and the danger of spring frost tends to be higher than those wine regions that has a moderation from the Gulf Stream. And that is really because of the significant quick jump really between winter and summer of these very continental areas. And we must talk here about climate change and leading to extreme climatic events. Climate change, or otherwise known in the wine industry as climate chaos, has actually been a fairly net positive to German viticulture for the last 30 years. And of course, whereas many parts of the world is suffering with the likes of drought, with the likes of flooding and a lot of bushfires, German viticulturalists are very quiet and fairly sort of reserved about shouting about this too much. But they do say collectively that they would like the effects of climate change to kind of stop now in Germany. They've hit a really good peak point and they would like to put the brakes on. Now, for generations, a lot of grape growers in Germany watched as their grapes struggle to achieve full and optimal ripeness. And typically, to balance the high acidity and to boost more texture and body, producers would help retain sugar or add sugar into both their whites and reds. And that is really to compensate for these wines not being ripe enough or too acidic. In the late 1990s, though, of course, at the real starting points where we were noticing climate change, these things would change and happen. Fruit got riper and it got a better natural balance between acid and sugar. And in red grapes specifically, grape phenolics matured much more consistently. And this really enabled many producers to move towards drier wine styles. Many think that Germany actually was rather slow moving on from sweeter expressions to dry wines, as the general trend of consumers was to drink dry examples. Germany really mirrored it in their ability to produce dry wine styles over the last 30 or 40 years or so. Now, even red varieties like Spätburgunder get great conditions in marginal places, places like the Ahr, where it was very challenging to grow it probably around 50 years ago. But that being said, if that's all positive, there is challenges certainly happening to German viticulture as well. We are getting earlier bud breaks, which means that frosts have more of a threat. And there are, in fact, later spring frosts. And there are atypical warm winters, which can then, with water, increase the humidity and increase the disease pressure. Then the extreme weather events, which can also be the back of this climate change. And this, it makes for very difficult presenting, but also for you, it will be a difficult listen to as well. And I would urge you to really investigate any of these disasters that do happen around the world, be it forest fires, be it flooding, be it any kind of serious droughts, and try and support those regions as much as possible as they go through very, very difficult times. Here's one which we sadly have to note in Germany, and this is from July 2021, where the Ahr River rose around 7 meters above its normal levels. This was absolutely catastrophic because this caused severe flooding to the middle to lower Ahr. And this was really catastrophic because it washed out critical infrastructure, so key bridges and roads, cellars, vineyards, and it, in fact, even worse than all of that, it took many lives. This is the most recent and the most extreme example of how climate change is forcing some Germanic growers to rethink how, where, and even if to continue growing grapes. Please do look at all of these, go and investigate art and serious great wines produced in the art and in the face of diversity, really producing wonderful wines. Have a look out for it. That's the end of this presentation. If you are interested in gaining full access to the whole of my Mastering Germany series, then you can subscribe to the Wine with Jimmy Club, which is a monthly subscription. It's cheaper than a cup of coffee, and you'll get access to lots of wonderful exclusive content, including the whole Mastering Germany series. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll see you very soon. And if you find yourself in the UK, come and say hello for a glass, or bottle. Dankeschön. Ciao for now.